Washington.
17 people were killed last night when a commuter airplane crashed at Owl's Head on the Maine coast. Only one passenger on that fully loaded Down East two-engine plane survived. The weather was bad, but airport officials don't think that that was the cause of the crash. Investigators keep discovering more structural problems with the DC-10. It was a DC-10 which crashed last week at O'Hare Airport after an engine fell off. Bob Kerr reports on those lab tests in Washington.
This is the lab where National Transportation Safety Board experts study airplane metal after accidents. Under study now, broken parts of the engine mount that fell from the American Airlines DC-10 just before it crashed. The chief of the Safety Board's accident division says preliminary indications show that there might have been metal fatigue or deterioration on these, which, when in one piece, held the engine onto the wing of the jet. That's why investigators are no longer sure that first this bolt broke, causing the engine and its mount to fall. They now say it's a very real possibility that the mount itself gave way, pulling the bolt and breaking it. A key question is why the pilot could not control the plane after the engine fell. The safety board has confirmed that flaps on that wing were not in proper takeoff position, indicating that the hydraulic system controlling them either failed or was knocked out by the falling engine. Today, the Federal Aviation Administration will receive a letter from a congressional subcommittee. It questions the way the FAA certifies aircraft, and it informs the FAA of its intention to hold hearings about the DC-10 as soon as possible. Bob Kerr, NBC News, Washington.
The major domestic airlines are putting many of their DC-10 planes back into service today. The FAA grounded those planes on Tuesday because of faults similar to the one that might have caused last Friday's crash at O'Hare. The DC-10s were grounded after two United Airlines mechanics found missing bolts, cracks, and other defects in the pylon which holds the engine to the wing. Dick Kay talked with one of those mechanics this morning.
Had you ever seen these plates removed in Chicago maintenance?
No, I haven't.
So why did you take them off?
Because the pylon flexing the way it did, it was not normal, and we wanted to find out why.
The pylon flexing the way it did, what do you think would have happened if that plane had been in the air, or could have happened?
Eventually, the pylon would have separated.
Broken as a result of the crash. It apparently was metal fatigue in another part of the engine mount that caused that bolt to break. Meanwhile, inspectors today found more defects in DC-10 aircraft. A federal official, however, says about 2/3 of those jetliners have now been recertified and are back in service. Dick Kay's been covering the story of the jet investigation, and he's here with the latest developments. Dick?
Jim, Safety Board investigators are checking computer data covering the last 25 hours in the life of Flight 191. The data on the DC-10's electrical and mechanical functions came from the digital flight recorder. Now, that recorder shut down about 9 seconds before the plane crashed, and we have learned that there are two dropouts in the recorder information, each 4 seconds in length during the DC-10's takeoff, just before the recorder shut down completely. Safety Board investigators want to know if the dropouts are significant, if they can be matched with the falling engine or any other events that might have led to the crash. They also want to know if the digital recorder data shows any abnormal vibrations during the 25 hours prior to the crash. Now, those vibrations could have caused the engine pylon assembly to crack somewhere and snap the thrust link bolt, at which time the engine would have dropped off. Cracks in pylon assemblies because of metal fatigue have been found in recent inspections, some of those cracks discovered by people who went an extra mile in inspections.
Lauren Schluter of Marengo and Ernest Gigliotti of Bensonville are the two United Airlines mechanics who did more than the FAA told them to do and probably prevented more tragic air crashes. The FAA told them to inspect some parts of a DC-10 engine mounting, but they found metal shavings in a mounting like this one on a United jet and decided to inspect the whole thing. They were shocked to find missing bolts, cracks, loose joints, and their findings forced the FAA to ground all DC-10s in the nation. We asked Schluter and Gigliotti what might have happened if the defective plane had flown in that condition.
Eventually, the pylon would have separated from the wing.
And the engine probably would have come off.
Well, the engine and pylon is an assembly, yes.
I figure what started it all was the wear in the mount bolts, caused
vibration, which when turned likely caused the cracks.
And if you had wear in the mount bolts and heavy vibration, it could eventually cause the entire thing to separate and the engine to come out.
Right. Eventually, right.
So the mechanics agree with the kind of defects they found during their inspections here at United. Heavy vibrations of any kind, which could have been caused by turbulence, bumpy runways, hard landings, could have caused these engines to separate from the wing. And we have already reported that safety board investigators have talked to some people who were aboard that American flight the day before who complained of vibrations in the left engine.
These scenes from a United DC-10 show what it's like inside the cabin of a jumbo jet over that left wing. The people who complained of the vibrations on the American flight were an American flight attendant and a passenger who sat back to back over the left engine on the DC-10 the day before it crashed. She was in a jump seat, the passenger just forward in a coach seat. The flight attendant was the only crew member to mention the engine vibration to safety board investigators because she was the only crew member sitting over that engine.
Maybe about 200 feet off.
The passenger was Joe Antonucci of Grand Rapids, Michigan, who today described that flight.
It was a little different than normally an air turbulence where the whole plane dips. It just felt as though somebody grabbed a plane and just started to shake it, and it kept on for about 15 or 20 seconds. And then just above the ground, maybe 10 foot above the ground, it stopped, it ceased, and it was a very smooth landing.
Investigators have called in frequency engineers from NASA to look at the engine pylons from the wreckage and are still checking to see if the remaining two engines were in fact running after the first engine cracked off. Jim?
We heard what the gentleman said there as his experience. What did the stewardess say, or the flight attendant?
First of all, the airlines has not told us who she is, and they do not want to make her available, I suppose, with good reason. But we understand that the flight attendant who sat in the jump seat over the wing said that there was a very hard and a very unusual vibration for about 5 seconds, just as Mr. Antonucci described. The reason that some of the people had been discounting it earlier, they said, was because the flight attendant was supposedly junior, but she had 12 years flying experience, and she was only junior on DC-10s, and she was the only person over that left wing.
Just a real quick question. Do I understand that she reported that to somebody after the plane landed or after the crash?
That's what the safety board investigators went back and interviewed them after the crash, and they were two people who did complain of the vibrations. That's not clear, but that's very significant. If we find out, we'll let you know.
Okay.
Thank you, Dick.
Thank you, Dick. We've also checked shortly before we came on the air with some of the airlines out at O'Hare, and American at least says that there are no delays caused by the engine mount inspections today. United Airlines, however, says that it's not the engine mount problem that is causing them some trouble today getting their flights out. They say that they just haven't gotten over that long strike, and United says that it's operating now at about 65% of their capacity, and they are improving every day. So as far as the inspection goes, the situation is getting better for passengers. Federal, state, and local officials today met to tie up some of the final details in their investigation of American Airlines Flight 190.
All DC-10s were grounded for inspection on Tuesday after two United Airlines mechanics found cracked and broken parts in the engine mount of one plane. Those mechanics talked with reporters for the first time today. Steve Shepard was there.
Orange Schluter and Ernest Gigliotti found the potentially dangerous condition because they did more than an original FAA flight directive asked them to.
In your opinion, was this airplane safe to fly under the conditions that you found there?
No, it was not.
How could this have happened? Shouldn't this have been found in a routine maintenance check?
Not necessarily. It might have happened since obviously it happened since the maintenance check had been performed.
Let me ask you, is this something that you normally do, that you normally strip the pylon down that far when you make these checks?
Not at Chicago. This is not a heavy maintenance station for DC-10s, which require that panel to be removed.
How did you feel when you found this? I mean, were you shocked that you found this thing in this condition, or what was your reaction when you saw it?
Well, we knew that we were looking for something, and we felt that we needed to search real close, and felt pretty bad when I found it.
Were you shocked?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Very much so.
Following their discovery, United Airlines grounded all its DC-10s on its own and contacted the FAA, which then grounded everybody else's DC-10 fleet for further inspection and repair. In the meantime, the flawed engine pylon from the United plane is being taken to McDonnell Douglas in California. It is hoped Douglas can find the cause for the problem and a cure. Until a cure is discovered, DC-10s, including their engine pylons, will be thoroughly checked at least every 10 days or 100 flying hours. What is frightening is that those flaws probably would not have been detected during routine maintenance. Steve Shepard, Channel 2 News.
That was just a few hours ago. Emery King is at O'Hare right now with members of the forensic team that is working to identify the bodies of the plane crash victims. Emery?
And Walter, we are in the O'Hare Hilton Airport Hotel where minutes from now Dr. Lowell Levin, who happens to be the president-elect of the American Academy of Forensic Science, will be conducting a news conference to give us the latest updated information on the identification of some of the remains from the air crash last Friday. Dr. Levin is here at the behest of American Airlines. He has been here since Friday.
There in the simulator down at Fort Worth.
Thank you, Hugh. Well, engine mountings on all DC-10s across the country continue to be inspected. So far, problems have turned up on an additional 25 planes.
But so far, none of the damage has been as bad as that found on a United jet right here in Chicago. 2 alert mechanics found an engine that wobbled, so they looked further, particularly at the web that connects the engine pylon to the aircraft's wing.
The upper part of the web was cracked. There was a piece missing out of it. The front part of the web had some loose bolts. One bolt was gone, and there was cracks around the bolt area.
In fact, 27 attachment bolts were missing.
What would have happened if this plane had been put back into service as it was?
Well, I feel eventually the engine would have come off of the wing.
The FAA admits it's known about the DC-10 engine mount problems for some time. In fact, there have been over 60 reports to them of such problems over the past 4 years.
Mechanics, airline officials, and FAA officials still maintain that the DC-10 is one of the sturdiest and safest planes built. Joel?
Still to come, Diane. Dr. Wall with a look at the